Good afternoon to you, friends and gamers of all stripes. I am GM Dave, your man behind the screen. I would like to welcome you to my second Rambling Roman vlog. Today we're going to be discussing a topic that I honestly did not expect to touch on so very early into the life of my channel. This was something that I had always planned to talk about, but I wanted to wait for a while before touching on the subject, as it is, at times, a rather touchy one. That is the topic of etiquette and criticism. Now, the reason why I decided to have this discussion now is because a couple of weeks ago, in one of the Facebook Pathfinder groups that I'm a part of, there was a GM who posited a question to that little community, wherein he asked how the others, as GMs, handle delicate and possibly controversial house rules at their tables. The question itself is not what spurred me to do this. Rather, it was the context that he gave before the question, and then the subsequent responses, not to the question, but to the context. This particular GM, and I will not share names, not that I could, I honestly can't remember his name, so there's that. But this particular GM has a ruling at his table where his players are not permitted to play characters of the sex or gender, whichever you prefer to view it as, other than their own. That is to say, men play men, women play women, so on and so forth, if you believe in the multiple, more than two genders thing. Now his reasoning for this ruling, a ruling that I personally do not agree with, at least that I wouldn't a ruling that I wouldn't impose. His reasoning was fair, at least in my own opinion. His reasoning, as he stated, was that he had ran into two very distinct problems at his table anytime his players attempted to play the opposite sex. The first problem was a sense of awkwardness about trying to play, in the case of this table, being a man and trying to play a woman. The players often had difficulty getting into the character. There was a clear sense of awkwardness there, and their inability to get into these characters without often breaking out into laughter or very clearly stumbling around in a bit of an awkward manner with trying to get this character's mannerisms down pat led to dragging play times and the breaking of immersion for the GM and his players. The second problem was a penchant by one or two of his players to play into that ever so beloved trope of the hypersexualized character of the opposite gender. And I don't specifically say the hypersexualized female character because, yes, although it is rarer, I have seen women do this with male characters as well. Nonetheless, we all know the character of the type I'm talking about. It's the one who is very flirty, very promiscuous, and will sleep with just about anything that has legs and something between them, if they think it'll be fun or if it will advantage them in some way. Naturally, because of this decision being controversial, it sparked some heated discussion. In saying that, well, I must clarify that that is in fact a gross understatement. And, in all honesty, a bit false. Heated discussion was not the name of the game here. Venom and vitriol was the name of the game on this particular thread. Now, I arrived at the thread about 2 hours after it had been posted, possibly 2.5. And by that time, the moderators had already shut it down, and it had already garnered somewhere around 200 replies. Apparently, at a point, it got so bad that the original poster went back and edited his post to add in a snippet at the beginning wherein he essentially said, if all you're interested in doing is attacking me, do not expect me to reply to your post in any way. I'm not interested in listening to people who are going to just attack me because they don't like the decision I made without considering why I made it. I am here to discuss the question I posed. Nothing more. And to his credit, that's exactly what he did, up until the time that the thread was closed. He only responded after a while to people who were actually responding to his question. Granted, that meant he did not actually get a whole lot of interaction on his own thread, because the vast majority of people were either spitting venom at him or spitting venom at the people spitting venom at him. This kind of behavior in this hobby is not acceptable. We're here to have fun. And as GMs, our job is to try and maintain the fun environment at our table in a manner that is healthy for our table. This particular situation for this GM was not a healthy one for his table. So he made a house rule to curb that problem. Now, most of the people there, like myself, don't generally have this problem. Or if they do, they took on the role of trying to coach their players and help them get better at role-playing a character of the opposite sex. Personally, that is what I had planned to suggest to this GM, that he maybe give it a try again and try coaching his players through it. Let things be awkward, let things evolve in their own way, but give it another shot and see if you can make it work. If you can't, by all means bring back the rule. The health of your table and the fun of your group is more important than some little experiment to see if you can make something that has been awkward no longer awkward. Unfortunately, a very large portion of this particular community did not seem to understand or did not care to understand what he was trying to get at. They took little to no interest in the question. And oftentimes, when they did take interest in the question, which, let me remind you, was a question on how they personally would handle a delicate situation like this at their table. He was trying to get other ideas on how he could handle this situation, presumably so that he could try to change things up a bit and maybe allow his players to do something that they, at least in theory, found a little fun. No. They didn't take the question into account, generally speaking. Or if they did so in a way that ultimately attacked him, as usual, for his controversial decision. Etiquette was thrown out the window. And criticism had turned into little more than shit talk. I'm all for a fun little bit of shit talk. I'm all for some slightly mean-spirited banter, and I'm absolutely for the idea that people can say whatever the fuck they want to say. In many ways, I'm a bit of a free speech absolutist. However, there are ways in which we should be behaving, or should be striving to behave, to keep this hobby the great hobby that it is. Discussion, civil and open, even if it's full of disagreements, even if it does eventually devolve into a swearing match. Civil discussion is the best way to make things better. And I do think that's what this original poster was trying to do. This GM wanted ways to potentially make his table better. I genuinely think that's what he was after. Otherwise, I don't think he would have bothered to ask the question at all. But instead of helping this man find a way to potentially make his table better, the vast majority of the community who answered under this post decided to try and shame him, spit venomous, horrible things at him, call him some of the worst names that I've seen. Over a decision at a table none of these people ever sat at. A decision that his players were okay with. Just because that decision happened to handle the controversial topic, at least in a small way, of sex, sexuality, and gender identity. Instead of behaving with a bit of tact, instead of approaching the question with a bit of nuance, the vast majority of people there decided to give in to their emotional outrage. Failing to understand that all they were doing was halting conversation, stymieing the greater topic and the greater discussion at hand, stymieing the potential growth of not only the community, but this individual GM, and behaving like a bunch of immature, petulant little children. There were nearly no adults left in that thread at that point. Just a bunch of screaming, whining babies. And it's a damn shame. Because the topic he posed was a good one and should have made for a fantastic discussion that we all in that thread could have learned from. And I think a few of us did. I certainly did. That's why I chose to speak about this now instead of waiting for some months down the line to tackle this particular topic. This thread stood as one of the finest examples of exactly how not to behave when faced with a decision that someone dislikes. Of how not to behave when it comes to bettering our community. Now, I know a lot of people are probably not going to be particularly pleased with me taking this guy's side. I'm sure there are going to be some people out there who, if and or when they see this video, are going to start spitting some venom at me. And you know what? That's fine. Let them spit their venom. I ask those of you who do agree with me, don't even bother. Don't even bother trying to argue back. Or at the very least, don't stoop to their level. Don't start insulting the people who would probably come after me for agreeing with this guy's decision because I feel that his reasoning was fair for his table. Even though I wouldn't do that myself. I'm well aware that this is a topic that, by my agreeing with him on, is going to get some people angry with me eventually. And that's okay. I can handle that. I've dealt with angry people all my life. But I hope that we can all learn a lesson from how this thread turned out. From how the chosen behaviors of these people turned out. Because when it came down to it, the thread had been closed after only 2 hours. Completely closed. The moderators had to step in faster than I've really ever seen them step in that community and shut things down, because that's how bad things were getting due to personal disagreements over the decision of someone these people were not even gaming with. Anyways, that's really all I have to say on the matter for today. I hope everyone found this video to at least be a little bit useful. If you agree, leave a comment. Tell me why. If you disagree, leave a comment. Tell me why. But please, again, let's keep this civil. Civil discourse will always do much more to improve this community than the spitting of venom and vitriol ever will. As they say, you attract more flies with honey than vinegar. So that's all for today, folks. As usual, my name is GM Dave, and I am your man behind the screen. Friends and gamers of all stripes, it is my sincerest hope that you roll high, role play well, and as always, game on.